Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun!
Swallowed by darkness, the world ceased to exist. Inside the stark white hospital ward, the incessant beeps from vital sign monitors echoed, mocking the fragile nature of existence. The bandages, stark white against the skin, tightly encircled wrists, a brutal reminder of a desperate attempt to escape agony. But the agony lingered, an oppressive burden accompanying a lifetime of deception. Strands of brunette hair covered a face, still and oblivious to the surroundings. Time passed, and the body began to stir, consciousness gradually resurfacing. First came the discomforting sensation of coarse hospital linens brushing against the skin, followed by faint sobs whispering in the shadows. "He's waking up," a comforting female voice whispered, breaking the mournful silence. Gently, the woman's hand caressed his face, sliding the obstinate hair away, exposing gaunt features etched with sorrow. "Can you hear me, honey?" The words felt like they were directed at someone else, a stranger wearing borrowed skin. The name itself, Wyatt, caused a physical recoil, like touching a hot stove. "I can't do this anymore," came the hoarse whisper. "I can't keep pretending." Hours later, after the doctors had completed their assessments and the psychiatrist had made notes, the room fell silent except for the family gathered around the hospital bed. Mother, father, and younger sister waited with worried expressions. "There's something I need to tell you." The words struggled to break free from years of silence. I'm not who you think I am. I've never been him, never been Wyatt." The confession poured out in painful fragments, a lifetime of feeling trapped in the wrong body, of looking in mirrors and seeing a stranger, of crushing gender dysphoria that had finally become too heavy to bear. Years of depression hadn't been random chemical imbalances, but the manifestation of a fundamental misalignment between inner identity and outer appearance. "I'm a woman. I've always been a woman." The words hung in the air, both terrifying and liberating. What followed wasn't the rejection that had been feared for so long. Instead, Mom's arms wrapped around in an embrace that communicated what words couldn't. Dad, usually stoic and reserved, wiped tears from his eyes before taking a deep breath. What should we call you?" he asked, voice unsteady but determined. The name had been chosen years ago, whispered only in private moments of fantasy. "Leila." "Leila," Mom repeated, testing the name. "It's beautiful." In the days that followed, after discharge from the hospital, the family moved with purpose. They found a therapist specializing in gender identity. They researched medical options. They educated themselves on how to support a transgender family member. Most surprisingly, they helped with the external transformation that would allow the world to see what had always existed within. Mom and Sister Caroline arrived one afternoon with shopping bags, nervous smiles, and determination. "We weren't sure what you'd like," Caroline said, emptying bags onto the bed. "But we thought maybe we could start figuring it out together?" The clothing they'd selected showed thoughtful consideration. Comfortable cotton dresses in botanical prints, casual denim skirts paired with feminine blouses, and several pairs of ballet flats in different colors. Clothes that would help blend in rather than stand out during these vulnerable early days. Holding up a lavender midi dress with a white lace overlay, Caroline grinned. "This one's my favorite. I thought it might look nice with your brown hair." That first time, trying on the lavender dress. Trembling fingers fumbled with the zipper. Caroline helped, her movements gentle and matter-of-fact, as though they'd done this 1,000 times before. "There," she said, stepping back. "Turn around." The mirror reflected someone both familiar and new. Brown hair needed styling. The stance was awkward, makeup non-existent, but the dress draped correctly over hips that had always seemed slightly too wide for a man, and something in the eyes had changed. A spark. Recognition. "That's me," Leila whispered. "That's actually me." The first public outing had been carefully planned. Not a crowded mall or restaurant, but family dinner at grandparents' colonial-style home in the suburbs. The familiar setting offered some comfort, but anxiety still twisted Leila's stomach as she slipped into the lavender dress, applied modest makeup following tutorial videos, and styled her growing brown hair as best she could. Dad drove, occasionally glancing over with an encouraging smile. "You look nice," he said simply, the words clearly practiced but sincere. Mom turned from the front passenger seat. "Remember, honey, if it gets overwhelming, we can leave any time. No questions asked." The car pulled into the familiar driveway. Leila's hands smoothed the lavender fabric over her knees, heart pounding.
"Ready?"
Dad asked. "No," Leila admitted. "But let's do it anyway." Grandfather opened the door before they could knock. His weathered face, usually set in stern lines from decades working construction, softened into a surprised smile. "Well now," he said, looking Leila up and down. "Don't you look pretty, Leila?" The correct name, spoken without hesitation, brought unexpected tears. Grandfather, noticing her emotion, simply opened his arms. The hug felt different. He was gentler than he'd ever been with Wyatt, but the embrace held no less love. Inside, aunts, uncles, and cousins waited. Some stared openly, others averted their eyes, discomfort evident. Awkward silence hung until grandmother bustled in from the kitchen. "Dinner's ready? Leila, sweetheart, would you help me bring out the salad?" Throughout dinner, mistakes happened. Leila, or occasionally an incorrect pronoun. Each time, grandfather cleared his throat loudly. "Her name is Leila," he corrected an uncle who had slipped. "And she looks lovely tonight. Now pass the potatoes." Later, helping grandmother with dishes while the others watched a baseball game, Leila finally asked the question. "How are you and Grandpa so okay with this? I expected—" Grandmother's hands stilled in the soapy water. "Your grandfather and I have been married 53 years. You know what that teaches you? People are who they are, not who you want them to be." She resumed washing. "Besides, he practiced your name all week. Made me quiz him. Said he wasn't going to fail his granddaughter when she needed him most." That night, back home, Leila hung the lavender dress carefully in her closet. The day had been exhausting, but affirming. Not perfect. Nothing would be perfect in this journey, but better than the darkness that had almost claimed everything. The next morning brought another step. The clinic waiting room was painted in calming blues and greens, but nothing calmed the nervousness as Leila sat in black ballet flats, a navy skirt, and a simple white blouse. Her brown hair, still growing out, had been styled as femme as its current length allowed.
"Leila Bennett,"
the nurse called, smiling warmly when Leila stood. Dr. Khatri was a petite woman with kind eyes behind stylish glasses. She reviewed the medical history, listened to the struggles, and explained options with neither judgment nor excessive enthusiasm, just professional care. "The path looks different for everyone," she explained. "Some of my patients focus primarily on social transition, others prioritize hormones, some eventually pursue surgical options. There's no single right way to be transgender." She wrote prescriptions for hormone therapy, recommended voice training resources, and scheduled follow-ups. "This is a marathon, not a sprint," she cautioned. "Be patient with your body and with other people. And most importantly, be patient with yourself." Walking out with prescriptions in hand felt surreal. This small piece of paper represented the beginning of physical alignment with the truth that had been buried for so long. Weeks passed. The hormone therapy began working its subtle magic. Skin softened. Emotions intensified, sometimes overwhelmingly so. Body shape gradually shifted. Each change, however small, felt like coming home to a place that had always existed but had been inaccessible. Work presented its own challenges. The architectural firm where Leila had been employed for 7 years had always prided itself on progressive values, but theory and practice often diverged. HR arranged a transition plan. Emails were sent. Facilities were adjusted. The morning of her official workplace transition, Leila selected a conservative dark green dress with a modest neckline and hem that fell just below the knees. Professional, understated, appropriate. Her growing brown hair was now styled in a feminine bob that framed her face. "You've got this," she whispered to her reflection. The office fell silent when she stepped off the elevator. Then, Marcus from accounting approached with a coffee cup. "2 sugars, no cream, right?"
Some things don't change.
He smiled, handed her the cup, and continued to his desk as if nothing unusual had happened. Others followed his lead. Mariana from the design team complimented her dress. The administrative staff updated her nameplate without fanfare. By afternoon, the initial awkwardness had largely dissolved into routine work discussions. Except for Richard.
"I've known you for 5 years as William,"
he declared loudly by the break room.
"I can't just flip a switch in my brain."
"Wyatt?" Leila corrected quietly.
"And I'm not asking you to flip a switch, just to try."
"Whatever," Richard shrugged.
"This whole thing seems like attention-seeking to me. No offense."
"Quite a bit taken, actually." Leila's voice remained steady despite the hurt. Richard's misgendering and dead naming continued through the week. HR discussions followed. Tensions simmered. Then came the Johnson Project presentation. Leila had spent weeks perfecting the designs for this renovation. Standing before the clients in a professional navy blue dress with subtle pinstriping, her confidence wavered only when Richard entered the conference room late.
"Sorry," he announced. "Got held up explaining to security who Leila Bennett was on the meeting schedule."
The clients looked confused. Leila took a deep breath, straightened her shoulders, and continued her presentation. The designs spoke for themselves. Innovative use of space, thoughtful preservation of historical elements, sustainable materials throughout. When she finished, Mr. Johnson nodded appreciatively.
"Excellent work, Ms. Bennett. You've addressed all our concerns, and then some."
"Thank you, but I can't take sole credit," Leila replied professionally. "Richard contributed significantly to the structural plans." Richard blinked, clearly surprised by the acknowledgement. After the clients left, he lingered in the conference room as Leila gathered her materials.
"You didn't have to do that,"
he said. "Do what?"
"Give me credit, especially after I've been..."
he trailed off. Leila slipped presentation boards into their case. I didn't do it for you. I did it because it's true, and because I'm a professional. Richard was quiet for a long moment. The Navy looks good on you. Professional. He turned to leave, then paused. I'll try harder, Leila. It wasn't an apology, but it was a beginning. Family dynamics continued evolving. Dad, initially supportive but reserved, began showing up with articles about transgender issues, eager to discuss what he was learning. Mom transitioned from overprotective to appropriately concerned, allowing Leila space to navigate adulthood on her own terms. Caroline became an outspoken ally, sometimes embarrassingly so. You don't need to correct the barista who called me sir, Leila told her after one coffee shop incident. I can handle it myself. But you shouldn't have to handle everything yourself, Caroline protested. That's the whole point of having family. The hormone therapy continued working gradual changes. Voice training helped develop more feminine speech patterns. Makeup skills improved through practice and YouTube tutorials. The growing collection of dresses, skirts, blouses, and feminine accessories no longer felt like costumes, but simply clothes. Her clothes. 6 months into transition, Leila found herself preparing for a milestone, her cousin Andrea's wedding. The invitation addressed to Ms. Leila Bennett had arrived with a handwritten note. Can't wait to see you there. Wear something fabulous. The emerald green cocktail dress with cap sleeves and a modest scooped neckline had been an investment piece. Standing before the mirror, Leila barely recognized the woman reflected back. Not because she looked like someone else, but because she finally looked like herself. Her brown hair, now grown past her shoulders, was styled in soft waves. Subtle makeup enhanced her features without masking them. You look stunning, Mom said from the doorway. Truly beautiful. The church was decorated with white roses and greenery. Leila felt eyes follow her as she walked to her assigned pew, but the stairs held more curiosity than hostility. Several relatives she hadn't seen since her transition approached with awkward but well-intentioned greetings. I almost didn't recognize you, Aunt Patricia said. Green is definitely your color. The reception brought its own challenges. Table assignments placed Leila next to elderly relatives and family friends who hadn't yet met her as herself. The initial introductions included confused looks and whispered consultations, but the wedding coordinator had thoughtfully placed a card with Leila Bennett at her setting, helping smooth the awkwardness. Would you like to dance? The question came from Cousin David's college roommate, Michael. Tall with kind eyes and an easy smile, he extended his hand. I'm not very good at dancing, Leila admitted. Fortunately, I excel at making my dance partners look competent by comparison, Michael replied. On the dance floor, his lead was confident but gentle. David told me about your journey, he said. Hope that's not uncomfortable to hear. Depends on what he said, Leila replied cautiously. He said his cousin was incredibly brave and finally living authentically. That's pretty much the direct quote. The music shifted to a slower song. Michael raised an eyebrow in question, and Leila nodded, allowing him to draw her slightly closer. Is this okay? He asked. Yes, she answered, surprised to find it was true. This simple human contact, dancing with a man who saw her as the woman she was, felt healing in ways therapy couldn't touch. They danced 2 more songs before returning to the table. Michael wrote his number on a napkin before rejoining David's group. Coffee sometime? As friends or whatever feels right? The napkin went into her clutch, a possibility to consider when she was ready. That readiness came gradually. The 1-year anniversary of her transition found Leila in a much different place than where she'd started. The small apartment she'd moved into after leaving her parents' house was decorated in soothing blues and greens. Bookshelves displayed architectural volumes alongside growing collections of fiction featuring strong female protagonists. The closet held carefully selected clothes that expressed both professionalism and femininity. Dresses in jewel tones, skirts in various styles, blouses that complemented her figure, and shoes that balanced comfort with style. Work had stabilized. Richard had evolved from reluctant colleague to occasional ally, correcting others when they slipped with pronouns. The Johnson renovation had been completed to acclaim, establishing Leila's professional reputation independent of her transition. Family holidays no longer centered around her identity, but simply included her as she was. Grandfather still occasionally beamed with pride when introducing my granddaughter Leila, but the family had largely absorbed the change into their normal functioning. The coffee with Michael had led to occasional meetups as friends, conversations about books and films, architecture, and travel. Nothing romantic had developed, but the friendship itself was valuable, a relationship that had only ever known her as Leila. One evening, scrolling through social media, Leila came across photos from high school. The images of Wyatt should have been painful, but instead they evoked unexpected compassion. That lost person in ill-fitting clothes with haunted eyes and forced smiles had been doing their best with impossible circumstances. "I see you," she whispered to the photos. "I'm sorry it took so long." The therapist had suggested writing letters to past self as a healing exercise. That night, wearing comfortable pajamas, brown hair tied back, Leila finally felt ready to try. "Dear Wyatt," she began, then paused. The name no longer triggered distress. It simply belonged to someone else, someone who had kept her safe until she could emerge. The letter flowed from there. Forgiveness for the years lost to fear, gratitude for surviving, acknowledgement of the strength it had taken to exist in painful misalignment for so long. By the final paragraph, tears streamed freely. "You won't be forgotten or erased," she wrote. "You're part of my journey. But now I get to live, really live, as myself, as Leila." 2 years post-transition, the invitation arrived. The high school reunion committee had tracked her down through updated alumni records. The envelope addressed to Leila Bennett contained a standard invitation and another handwritten note from Jamie, the committee chair. "We'd love to have you there. Everyone is welcome as their authentic selves." The decision wasn't easy. High school had been particularly painful, attempting to fulfill others' expectations while drowning in dysphoria. But therapeutic work had strengthened Leila's ability to navigate difficult situations. Perhaps returning on her own terms might offer closure. For the reunion, she selected a royal blue cocktail dress that complemented her brown hair, now long enough to style in an elegant updo. The outfit was completed with silver accessories and comfortable but stylish heels, clothing that expressed confidence without seeking attention. Entering the hotel ballroom, where class of 2008 banners hung from the ceiling, required all her courage. Conversations paused briefly as people noticed her arrival, then resumed with increased energy. Name tags waited on a table near the entrance. "I need one for Leila Bennett," she told the volunteer. "Of course." The woman searched through pre-printed tags. "I don't see one. Let me check under your previous—" "That's all right," Leila interrupted smoothly. "I'd prefer a blank one I can fill out myself." Armed with her self-written name tag, Leila navigated the room. Some former classmates greeted her warmly. Others clearly didn't recognize her. A few watched from a distance, whispering behind drinks. "Leila?" The voice belonged to Keith, former basketball team captain. They had once been assigned as chemistry lab partners, Wyatt quietly completing most of the work, while Keith took most of the credit. "Keith?" she acknowledged with a polite smile. "How are you?" "Good, good." He studied her face. "You look happy. That's different." The observation, simple but perceptive, caught her off guard. "I am happy. That is different." The conversation might have become awkward, but Jamie appeared, champagne flutes in hand. "Leila, I'm so glad you came." She offered a glass. "Keith, the Milwaukee contingent is looking for you by the photo display." Keith nodded and moved away. Jamie linked her arm through Leila's. "Sorry if that was presumptuous," she said. "But he looked like he was about to say something thoughtless. And you deserve better tonight." "Thank you," Leila replied sincerely. Jamie guided her toward a group that included several former drama club members. "Everyone, you remember Leila?" The introductions flowed naturally. These people, creative outsiders even in high school, asked thoughtful questions about her architectural career, shared their own journeys, and generally created a bubble of acceptance in the broader reunion atmosphere. Later, standing by the memory table displaying photos of departed classmates, Leila felt someone approach. "I owe you an apology," said a familiar voice. Turning, she found herself facing Teresa, who had once been the ringleader of particularly cruel hallway taunts aimed at Wyatt's quiet demeanor and slightly feminine mannerisms. "That's not necessary," Leila began. "It is." Teresa's makeup couldn't quite hide the evidence of hard living. "I was horrible to you. I think I somehow sensed you were different, and it scared me because I was struggling with my own stuff." She twisted a sobriety medallion hanging from her necklace. "Part of recovery is making amends when possible." The apology was unexpected, but oddly healing. "Thank you for saying that. I hope you're finding your way. Day by day." Teresa offered a tentative smile. "You look really good, by the way. At peace." The observation echoed throughout the evening. From former teachers who remembered a withdrawn student now engaging confidently with peers. From classmates who noticed the easy posture that had replaced rigid self-consciousness. From Jamie, who hugged her goodbye with whispered words. "I wish we could have known you then. Really known you." "I was still figuring it out myself," Leila replied honestly. The reunion provided unexpected closure. Driving home in her sensible sedan, Leila realized she no longer lived in reaction to that painful adolescence. The past remained part of her story, but it no longer dictated her present. 3 years post-transition, life had found new rhythms. The hormone therapy had completed most of its physical changes. Voice training had become habitual patterns. The wardrobe of feminine clothes, dresses in various colors and styles, professional attire for work, casual options for weekends, no longer felt like conscious choices but simply her clothes. The friendship with Michael had gradually developed into cautious dating. His patience allowed the relationship to evolve at a pace that felt safe. Their first kiss had happened on a rainy evening after dinner at a quiet restaurant, standing under the awning, waiting for the downpour to ease.
"May I?"
he had asked, hands gently cradling her face. The kiss was tender, respectful, and stirred something that felt like possibility. Neither rushed what followed. Michael's background in psychology gave him unusual insight into the complexities of her journey, while his own experiences with anxiety provided common ground beyond her transition. Family had continued their own evolution. Dad, initially the more reserved parent, had become an unexpected advocate, joining a support group for families of transgender individuals and occasionally speaking at community events about their journey. Mom had found balance between protective instincts and respect for Leila's independence. Caroline had channeled her fierce allyship into a career in healthcare policy. Career advancement came with a promotion to senior designer. The firm now occasionally asked Leila to represent them at diversity events, a role she accepted selectively, wary of being reduced to just her transgender identity, but recognizing the importance of visibility. "You're a talented architect who happens to be transgender," her supervisor clarified during one such conversation. "We value both aspects of your contribution, but never forget the talent came first." The affirmation meant more than expected. Grandfather's 80th birthday brought extended family together at the colonial-style house. Leila arrived in a casual floral dress that complemented her brown hair, now falling in natural waves past her shoulders. The celebration was lively, spanning 4 generations. Young cousins ran through sprinklers in the backyard. Aunts and uncles managed the massive potluck spread. Grandfather held court from his favorite chair, receiving guests with the benevolent dignity of a family patriarch. When Leila approached with his gift, a hand-drawn architectural rendering of his first home, he patted the armrest of the adjacent chair. "Sit with me a minute." They watched the family bustle around them. Children shrieked with laughter. Someone dropped a casserole dish, causing momentary commotion. Life in all its messy glory unfolded before them.
"Did I ever tell you about my brother Robert?"
Grandfather asked, unexpectedly. "I don't think so."
"He was born before me. Would have been my older brother."
The old man's weathered hands smoothed over the gift wrapping.
"Back in those days, they didn't have words for people like him.
He was just different. Sensitive. Preferred helping mother in the kitchen to working fields with father." Leila listened, sensing the importance of this rare glimpse into family history. "He left home at 16. Letters came occasionally from
different cities. Then they stopped."
Grandfather's voice grew quieter.
"Years later, Mother received a death notice. The name was Roberta Johnson. Same birthday as Robert. Took us time to understand."
The revelation hung in the sunlit air between them.
"I never got to meet my sister,"
Grandfather continued.
"Never got to tell her she was loved as she was. That's why."
His voice caught.
"That's why when you told us who you really were, I wasn't going to make the same mistake twice."
Leila reached for his hand, tears blurring her vision. "Thank you for telling me about her."
"Family is family,"
he said simply.
"Now help an old man to the cake table before they start without us."
That evening, driving home in comfortable silence, Michael reached across the console to take her hand.
"Your family is pretty amazing,"
he observed. "They've come a long way," Leila agreed. "We all have." "Marry me!" The words were so unexpected that Leila thought she'd misheard. "What?" Michael pulled the car into a scenic overlook where the city lights spread below them.
"I was going to plan something elaborate, but seeing you today with your family..."
He turned to face her.
"I love you, Leila. I love your strength and your compassion. I love how you forgive without forgetting. I love who we are together."
From his pocket, he produced a simple ring with a single emerald.
"Marry me?"
The moment crystallized everything that had happened since that hospital room 3 years earlier. The journey from darkness to light. From isolation to connection. From survival to living. "Yes," she whispered. Yes. The wedding planning unfolded over the next year. Leila selected an elegant, cream-colored gown with cap sleeves and subtle beading. Her brown hair would be styled in an updo adorned with small, fresh flowers. The emerald engagement ring would be joined by a simple gold band. Dad, walking her down the aisle, whispered,
"I'm so proud of the woman you've become."
The ceremony itself was a blend of traditional and personal. Grandfather, now requiring assistants to stand but insisting on doing so for this occasion, read a poem about authentic love. Caroline served as maid of honor, managing to keep her joyfully tearful speech under 5 minutes. Michael's vows acknowledged the unique path that had brought them together, not despite Leila's journey, but enriched by her courage throughout it. "I promise to honor who you've always been, who you are now, and who we'll become together," he pledged. Leila's response came from the heart. "I promise to bring my whole self to our marriage. All the parts of my journey that made me who I am today. I promise to love authentically, speak truthfully, and face whatever comes with the same courage that brought me to this moment." The reception celebrated not just their union, but the community that supported it. Colleagues who had become friends, family members who had grown through challenges, new connections forged through shared values rather than obligation. Late in the evening, Leila stepped outside for a moment of quiet reflection. The stars above seemed particularly bright, as if celebrating alongside the earthbound gathering.
"Room for company?"
Michael asked, joining her on the garden bench. "Always," she replied, leaning against his shoulder. Together they sat in comfortable silence, the sounds of celebration drifting through open windows. The journey hadn't ended. Life never offered such neat conclusions, but this moment represented a milestone worth honoring.
"Happy?"
Michael asked simply. Leila considered the question with the thoughtfulness it deserved. Beyond the joy of the wedding day lay the deeper consideration of her life's trajectory, from the darkness that had nearly claimed everything to this moment of authentic existence. "Yes," she answered with absolute certainty.
"Completely."
The lavender dress from that first family dinner still hung in her closet, a reminder of beginnings. The emerald green cocktail dress from the reunion symbolized reclamation. The cream wedding gown represented new chapters yet to be written. But it was the woman wearing these clothes who mattered most. Leila, finally and fully herself, stepping confidently into whatever came next.
Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!